Me, Paul, just hit my early 30s. Got a stable job at a mid-sized company. The kind of place that's big enough to be soulless, but small enough that you still know everyone's name. I do my job, I do it well. Not a superstar, not a slacker, just a reliable guy who gets things done. For the last few years, life has been pretty simple. Work, go home, hang out with my wife, save up for a house, the usual stuff. Then, a few months ago, the big event happened. My wife and I had our first kid, a little boy. It's a complete life changer, obviously. Sleep is now a forgotten luxury. My brain feels like it's running on dial-up. But holding him is the best thing in the world. Totally worth it. The company has a paternity leave policy, not super generous, but it's something. I took a few weeks off. It was a whirlwind of diapers, weird baby noises, and trying to remember if I'd eaten that day. Fast forward to my first day back in the office. Feel like a zombie, but I'm ready to get back into the routine. Walking in feels a little strange, like I've been gone for a year. My cubicle is exactly as I left it, covered in a thin layer of dust. First person I see is Terry. She's a designer, been here a few years longer than me, has 2 kids of her own. She gives me this knowing, tired smile, asks to see pictures of the baby, tells me the first few months are the hardest and that I should just survive. It's comforting to hear. Then Bruce comes over. He's the office veteran, been with the company since the Stone Age, probably. Super cynical guy, but deep down he's decent. He slaps me on the back, asks if I'm ready to return to the structured misery of corporate life. I laugh and tell him it's better than getting no sleep. He just grunts and says, "Give it time." I settle in, check my emails, and try to catch up. Seems like not much has changed. Then I notice an all-hands meeting for our department on the calendar for 10 a.m. The subject line is Departmental Update and Introduction. I ask Terry what that's about. Her expression gets a little tight. She explains that while I was gone, our old boss, a decent guy named Frank, took a job at another company. Apparently it all happened very suddenly. And his replacement started last week. Her name is Cheryl. At 10 a.m., we all file into the main conference room. In walks a woman in her late 30s, dressed very professionally, power suit, the works. It's Cheryl. She has this intense, almost forced smile plastered on her face. She starts the meeting with a bunch of corporate buzzwords, talking about leveraging our assets and optimizing our workflow. My eyes are already starting to glaze over. Then the speech takes a turn. She starts talking about her leadership philosophy, all about creating a forward-thinking, equitable, and empowering workspace. She mentions dismantling systemic barriers and making the office a safe space for female voices to be amplified. I look over at Bruce. He's staring at the ceiling, looking profoundly bored. A few of the younger women in the department are nodding along enthusiastically. I don't really think much of it. Just sounds like standard HR-approved talking points. Every company says this stuff now. The first week is pretty normal. She's learning the ropes, I'm catching up on projects. I notice little things, though. She decorates her office with a bunch of those generic girl boss posters. A coffee mug appears on her desk that says, "The future is female." In meetings, if a man and a woman talk over each other by accident, she'll always cut the man off and say, "Let's allow her to finish her thought." It's a little weird, but whatever. As long as the work gets done, I don't care. I'm just focused on my job and getting home to my family. A couple of weeks later, the first real issue comes up. I'm at my desk, deep in a spreadsheet, when my phone buzzes. It's my wife. She's in a panic. Our son has a really high fever and is having trouble breathing. She's on her way to the emergency room. My heart drops into my stomach. I grab my stuff. My mind is just racing. I find Cheryl in her office and explain the situation quickly. I tell her my son is sick and I have to go to the hospital right now. She looks up from her computer, and for a second, there's just no expression on her face. It's like a blank wall. Then the corporate smile clicks back on. "Of course, Paul. Family comes first," she says, but her tone is completely flat. Then she adds, "Just remember, we have that project deadline at the end of the day. It's critical." I'm so focused on my son that I just nod and say, "I'll get it done." I race to the hospital. Everything is a blur of doctors, nurses, and waiting. It's terrifying. Turns out to be a bad case of RSV. He has to stay in the hospital overnight for observation. I'm there all night with my wife, taking turns watching him in this tiny little crib. Around 2 a.m., when my wife is finally asleep in the chair, I pull out my work laptop. I sit in the dim light of the hospital room and finish the report Cheryl was talking about. My eyes feel like they're full of sand. I email it to her at 4 a.m. with a note saying I'll be working from home the next day to be close to the hospital. I get an automated reply. The next day, he's doing a little better. They discharge him in the afternoon. The relief is overwhelming. I work from home, juggling a crying baby and conference calls. It's hell, but I manage. When I come back to the office the day after, I expect her to maybe ask how my son is. Nothing. She walks past my desk and just says, "Good to see you're back. We need to discuss the Q3 projections." Not a word about my family, not even a hope everything is okay. It felt cold. Bruce asks me later how the little guy is doing. I tell him he's back home and recovering. He nods and just says, "Be careful with the new boss." She's a true believer. I didn't really get what he meant at the time. Over the next month or so, things get progressively worse. My son is okay, but like all babies, he gets sick. He has follow-up doctor's appointments. Every time I have to leave early or come in late for an appointment, it's a whole production with Cheryl. I always give her as much notice as possible. I put it on the calendar, I make sure all my work is covered. But every time I get the look. It's a look of pure distilled annoyance. She'll sigh dramatically and say something passive-aggressive like, "It must be nice to have so much flexibility." Or, "We all have personal lives, Paul, but the business needs to come first." The irony is, Terry has to leave for her kids' stuff all the time. School plays, parent-teacher conferences, you name it. And when Terry tells Cheryl she needs to leave early, Cheryl's reaction is the complete opposite. She'll beam and say, "Of course, Terry, you are such an inspiration, juggling a career and motherhood. Go, you super mom." The double standard is so blatant it's almost funny. I'm working my tail off to prove I'm committed. I'm staying late to make up for any time I missed. I'm answering emails at 11 p.m. after the baby is finally asleep. My performance is solid, my numbers are good. I'm hitting all my targets. But it doesn't matter. In her eyes, I'm becoming a problem. She starts micromanaging me, checking in on my progress multiple times a day, questioning my decisions on things I've been handling for years. She starts leaving me off of important email chains. I'll find out about a major change to a project I'm on by hearing other people talk about it in the break room. It's a deliberate, systematic freeze-out. One day we're in a team meeting, brainstorming ideas for a new campaign. I pitch an idea. It's well thought out, based on solid data. The room is quiet for a second, and then Cheryl just says, "Okay. Any other ideas from people who have been fully present recently?" The air in the room just went out. Everyone was looking down at the table, avoiding eye contact. It was a direct, public shot at me, humiliating. My face got hot. I didn't say anything, just stared at my notepad for the rest of the meeting. After the meeting, Bruce walks by my desk. He doesn't stop, just leans in and says quietly, "Start a paper trail, save every email, write down dates and times of conversations. You're gonna need it." That's when I knew this was serious. I started doing exactly that. I created a personal folder in my email and forwarded every weird interaction. I kept a log on my phone. It felt paranoid, but Bruce's warning spooked me. The atmosphere got even more toxic. Cheryl started having these women in leadership lunches. She would invite all the women in the department, including Terry, to go out to a nice restaurant, all on the company card. The guys were just left in the office to eat their sad desk salads. It was framed as a mentorship opportunity, but it was obviously just a way to create an in-group and an out-group, and I was definitely in the out-group. She'd talk loudly in the office about male privilege and the invisible labor that women do. One time she was complaining about how men never seem to have to worry about the mental load of running a household. This was on a day after I had been up all night with a sick baby and had come to work on 2 hours of sleep. The lack of self-awareness was staggering. Terry started looking more and more uncomfortable with the situation. I could tell she saw what was happening. After one of the women-only lunches, she came by my desk and quietly apologized. Said she felt weird about it and that it wasn't right. I just told her it was fine, not her fault. But it was good to know I wasn't going crazy. The breaking point, or what I thought was the breaking point, came during my mid-year performance review. I went into her office, expecting a standard, boring review. I had my file with all my completed projects, my sales numbers, everything showing I was exceeding my goals. She didn't even look at it. She had a single piece of paper in front of her. She starts talking in this calm, corporate speak voice. Tells me there are concerns about my commitment and engagement with the team. I'm stunned. I ask her what she means. My performance has been excellent. She says, performance isn't just about numbers, Paul. It's about presence. It's about being a team player. And your priorities seem to be divided. I can't believe what I'm hearing. I tell her I've been putting in extra hours every single week to make up for any family-related appointments. I point out that I've never missed a deadline. She just gives me this pitying look. It seems like you're struggling with work-life balance, she says. Perhaps this role is more demanding than you can handle right now, with your new situation at home. The condescension is dripping from her voice. She's weaponizing my fatherhood against me. I feel this surge of anger, but I keep my cool. I know losing my temper is exactly what she wants. I calmly state that my situation at home has not impacted the quality or quantity of my work, and the results prove it. She ignores me and slides the piece of paper across the desk. It's a formal performance improvement plan, a PIP. Everyone in the corporate world knows what a PIP is. It's not a tool for improvement. It's the first step to getting fired. It's the company building a case against you. The PIP is full of vague, subjective nonsense. Needs to demonstrate increased proactive engagement in team meetings. Must exhibit a higher level of commitment to departmental goals. Should minimize personal disruptions during work hours. It was a joke, a completely fabricated document to justify getting rid of me. I ask her for specific measurable examples of where I've failed. She can't provide any. She just repeats the vague corporate phrases. We just need to see a more dedicated mindset from you, Paul. She tells me I have to sign it. I tell her I don't agree with the assessment. She says, you can add your comments, but your signature is just to acknowledge that we had this conversation. Her voice is cold as ice. I feel trapped. If I don't sign, it's insubordination. If I do sign, I'm agreeing to this sham. I write a short paragraph in the comments section, stating that I formally disagree with the contents of the review, and that my performance has consistently met or exceeded all documented expectations. Then I sign it. I walk out of her office feeling numb. I sit at my desk and just stare at my computer screen. The whole office is quiet. I think they know what just happened. Bruce catches my eye from across the room and gives me a small, grim nod. I feel completely isolated. Like the system is rigged and there's nothing I can do. She has all the power. I have none. I've worked hard, been a loyal employee, done everything right, and now I'm being punished for being a father, punished by a woman who preaches about equity and support all day long. The hypocrisy is nauseating. I go home that night and I don't tell my wife. I don't want to worry her. We have a new baby, a mortgage. The last thing she needs is to hear that I'm probably about to lose my job. I just hold my son and watch him sleep, and I wonder what the hell I'm going to do next. The PIP gives her a 30-day window to find any excuse, no matter how small, to finalize the process. The clock was officially ticking. I was walking on eggshells every second of every day at work. The next 30 days were the longest month of my life. Walking into the office every morning felt like walking into a hostile territory. I was under a microscope. I could feel her eyes on me every time I got up from my desk to get water. My entire routine changed. I started showing up 30 minutes early. I left an hour late. I didn't take a real lunch break. I ate a sandwich at my desk in 10 minutes while continuing to work. Every task I completed, I would send a confirmation email, just confirming that the report for Project X has been completed and uploaded to the server. I was creating my own trail of evidence, a meticulous record of my productivity. Bruce called it malicious compliance. He said it was the only way to fight a PIP. You have to be so perfect that when they fire you anyway, the lie is obvious to everyone. My interaction with Cheryl became robotic and formal. I only spoke to her when absolutely necessary. I kept every conversation brief and to the point. She, on the other hand, seemed to be enjoying it. There was this little smirk she'd get when she saw me hunched over my keyboard, working through lunch. It was a power trip for her. She was the one in control, and she wanted me to know it. She started trying to catch me slipping up. One afternoon, she came to my desk at 4:45 p.m., dropped a huge stack of papers on my desk. I need you to analyze this data and have a summary report on my desk first thing in the morning. It was a ridiculous amount of work, a multi-day task, easily. She knew it was impossible. She was setting me up to fail. I just looked at her and said, "No problem, Cheryl. It'll be there." I didn't go home that night. I stayed in the office, fueled by vending machine coffee and sheer spite. I worked all through the night, my eyes burning. The empty office was eerie. At 6 a.m., I finished the report. I printed it, put it in a neat binder, and placed it right in the center of her desk. Then I went to the office bathroom, splashed some water on my face, and went back to my desk to start the new day. When she walked in at 8:30 a.m., she saw the report on her desk. She stopped dead in her tracks. She couldn't hide the flicker of surprise and disappointment on her face. She had expected me to fail. I hadn't. She picked up the report, flipped through it without really reading it, and put it down without a word. No thank you. No acknowledgement of the all-nighter I obviously pulled. That was her style. The goalposts were always moving. The office environment was tense. People knew what was going on. It wasn't a secret. My colleagues started treating me differently. Some of them avoided me completely, like I was contagious. They didn't want to get caught in the blast radius. I couldn't blame them. They had their own jobs to protect. A few, like Terry and Bruce, went the other way. Bruce would make a point of stopping by my desk to talk about sports or some random news story, just a normal conversation. It was his way of showing solidarity without being confrontational. Terry would quietly forward me emails that Cheryl had forgotten to include me on. One time, she saw me looking exhausted and just left a cup of coffee on my desk and walked away. These little things meant a lot. It was a reminder that I wasn't entirely alone. Cheryl's behavior got more and more brazen. She started scheduling urgent team meetings for 4:30 p.m. on Fridays. Meetings that would drag on for hours, filled with pointless circular discussions. It was a loyalty test. She wanted to see who was willing to sacrifice their personal time for her. She would praise the people who stayed and contributed, calling them real team players. I stayed for every single one, even though I was dying to get home to my family. I would participate, offer constructive input, and act like this was a normal and reasonable thing to be doing at 7 p.m. on a Friday. Meanwhile, my home life was suffering. I was barely seeing my son awake. I'd leave before he woke up and get home after he was asleep. My wife was carrying almost the entire load. She was incredibly supportive, but I could see the strain it was putting on her. I felt like I was failing at work and at home. I was stretched so thin, I felt like I was going to snap. This was the work-life balance Cheryl was so concerned about. She was the one destroying it. One time, I had a dentist appointment that I had scheduled months in advance. It was during my lunch hour. I put it on the shared calendar a week ahead of time. I sent her a reminder email the day before. 10 minutes before I'm supposed to leave, she messages me, "I need you to join this client call in 5 minutes. It's mandatory." I knew it wasn't. It was a routine check-in call that my junior colleague could have handled. I had to call the dentist and cancel, getting charged a cancellation fee. I sat on that pointless call, seething, while she sat in her office, probably smiling. It was a constant game of psychological warfare. I was about 3 weeks into the PIP. I was exhausted, but I was surviving. I hadn't given her a single concrete reason to fire me. I had documented every task, met every deadline, and tolerated every bit of humiliation she threw at me. I was starting to think I might actually make it through the 30 days. Maybe, just maybe, if I was perfect enough, she'd have to back off. I was naive. It was a Wednesday. I remember it was gray and rainy outside. The day was a blur of meetings and reports, same as any other day in the pressure cooker. Around 2 p.m., my phone, which was on my desk face down, started vibrating like crazy. I glanced at it. It was my wife. She never calls me multiple times in a row unless it's a true emergency. My blood ran cold. I picked up the phone and answered. I couldn't even understand what she was saying at first. She was hysterical, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. "He's not breathing. Paul, the baby's not breathing." The world just stopped. Those words, they just don't compute. My brain couldn't process it. She was sobbing that she had called 911 and the paramedics were on their way. I don't remember what I said. I think I just kept repeating, "I'm on my way." I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely function. I just stood up. I didn't grab my coat, my bag, nothing. My entire universe had just shrunk down to one single point. Get home. Terry was at the desk next to mine. She saw the look on my face and her eyes went wide. Paul, what's wrong? I think I mumbled something about the baby. I couldn't form a coherent sentence. I started running towards the exit. As I passed Cheryl's office, her door was open. She was on the phone, laughing about something. I didn't stop. I didn't have time to explain. All I could think about was getting to my son. Terry, bless her, understood. As I was running out, I heard her shouting behind me, "Cheryl, it's an emergency! Paul had to leave. His son!" I didn't hear Cheryl's reply. The drive home was the worst 20 minutes of my life. I have no memory of it. I just know I ended up in my driveway. An ambulance was there, lights flashing. I ran inside. The image will be burned into my brain forever. 2 paramedics working on my tiny son on the living room floor. My wife was in a corner, just a wreck. They got him breathing again. They said he had what they called an apneic episode. They didn't know why. They bundled him up and rushed him to the ambulance. I rode in the back with him, holding his little hand, watching the numbers on the heart monitor. My wife followed in our car. We spent the entire night and the next day in the pediatric ICU. It was a living nightmare of tests, doctors, and beeping machines. I didn't think about work once. My job, Cheryl, the PIP, it all just vanished. None of it mattered. My world was inside that little hospital room. The doctors ran every test imaginable. They couldn't find a clear cause, which was almost scarier. They wanted to keep him for at least another night for monitoring. Late the next afternoon, he was finally stable. He was sleeping peacefully. My wife was dozing in the chair next to his crib. My phone had been off the whole time. I turned it on for the first time in over 24 hours. It was flooded with texts from family and friends, and one single solitary email. It was from HR. The subject line was, "Urgent, meeting regarding your employment." The email stated that I was required to attend a meeting the following morning at 9 a.m. in Cheryl's office. My stomach turned to a knot of ice. I knew exactly what this was. They didn't even wait. My son was still in the hospital, and they were calling me in to fire me. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. I sent a short reply. "Understood. I will be there." I told my wife I had to go into the office for a bit in the morning. I lied and said it was just to sign some paperwork for my leave of absence. I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth, not while she was already so fragile. The next morning, I drove to the office. I felt hollowed out. I hadn't slept in 2 days. I was wearing the same clothes I had on when I ran out of the office. They probably smelled like a hospital. I didn't care. I walked through the doors at 8:55 a.m. The office was silent. Everyone saw me. They all knew where I had been. I could see the pity in their eyes. I didn't look at anyone. I just walked straight to Cheryl's office. The door was slightly ajar. I knocked. "Come in, Paul," she said. I walked in. She was sitting behind her big desk, looking pristine and professional as always. Sitting in the chair next to her desk was a man I didn't recognize. He was in a bland gray suit. He had the tired, emotionless eyes of a man who did this for a living. He was the HR manager. There was no small talk. No, "How was your son?" Cheryl just folded her hands on her desk and got straight to it. Her voice was calm and even, like she was discussing the weather. "Paul, as you know, we placed you on a performance improvement plan a few weeks ago." I just stared at her. The goal of the plan was to see a marked improvement in your commitment and reliability. Unfortunately, we have not seen that. I almost laughed. It was so absurd. "Yesterday," she continued, "you abandoned your post in the middle of the workday without authorization. This is a serious breach of company policy and the final confirmation that you are not capable of meeting the requirements of your position." I finally found my voice. It came out as a quiet croak. "My son stopped breathing, Cheryl." She didn't flinch. Her expression didn't change. "We understand that you have personal matters to attend to," she said, the corporate jargon sounding obscene in that moment. "However, your sudden departure created a significant operational disruption. It demonstrated a profound lack of professionalism." The HR guy just sat there, silent, a human-shaped lump of corporate liability protection. I couldn't process the level of inhumanity. She was firing me for rushing to my son's side when I thought he was dying. and she was dressing it up in the language of a business textbook. I didn't argue, I didn't plead. What was the point? It was a foregone conclusion. This was always the plan. The emergency was just the convenient excuse she had been waiting for. I was just empty, too tired to be angry, too shocked to be sad. The HR guy finally spoke. He slid a thick folder across the desk towards me. "This is your separation agreement," he mumbled. "It includes the standard severance package, contingent on you signing a non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement." It was a threat wrapped in legal jargon. Take the money and shut up or you get nothing. I didn't even look at it. I just stood up, turned around, and walked out of her office. I walked back to my desk. The entire department was watching me. It was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I grabbed the empty cardboard box I had stashed under my desk. Bruce had told me to get one on the first day of the PIP. "Always be ready to pack," he'd said. I started putting my things in it, my family photos, the stupid little coffee mug my wife gave me, a couple of reference books. It didn't take long, my whole career at that company reduced to a small box of trinkets. As I finished, I looked up. I saw Terry. She had tears in her eyes. I saw Bruce. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at Cheryl's closed door, and his face was like thunder. I picked up my box. I walked through the office, past all my colleagues, and I didn't say a word. And as the automatic glass doors slid shut behind me, the silence was finally broken. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I could see it through the glass. Terry was standing up at her desk. She was shouting something at Cheryl's office, and then Bruce stood up too. I drove home in a daze. I walked into my house, and my wife just looked at me. She knew immediately something was wrong. I didn't have to say a word. She saw the box in my hand, and her face just crumbled. I finally told her everything. The PIP, the harassment, the meeting, all of it. She didn't get angry at me for not telling her sooner. She just hugged me. We sat there for a long time, just holding each other while our son was still miles away in a hospital. It was the lowest point of my entire life. I felt like a complete failure, unemployed, a sick kid, a mortgage to pay. The whole system I had trusted and worked hard in had just chewed me up and spat me out. The next few days were a blur. My son got better, thank God. They let him come home after another day of observation. Having him home was the only thing that kept me from falling into a black hole. I was just going through the motions, applying for unemployment, trying to polish my resume. I didn't look at the severance agreement. I just left it in the folder. About 3 days after I was fired, my phone rang. It was Bruce. I almost didn't answer. I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone, but I did. "Don't sign a damn thing," was the first thing he said. No hello. I told him I hadn't. "Good," he said. "Things are interesting here." He told me what happened after I left. Apparently, the moment I was out the door, Terry went off. She stood up and yelled at Cheryl's closed door, something like, "Are you proud of yourself? Firing a man while his child is in the ICU? What kind of feminist are you?" A few other people started shouting too. The whole department just erupted. Cheryl had apparently locked herself in her office for the rest of the day. Bruce said the atmosphere in the office was pure poison now. No one was doing any real work. Everyone was angry. The women Cheryl had been trying to champion were the most disgusted of all. They saw her for what she was, a bully who used ideology as a weapon. He told me to hang tight and call a lawyer. He gave me a name and number. It felt good to hear. It felt like I wasn't crazy. Other people saw the injustice. I called the lawyer Bruce recommended. He listened to my whole story patiently. I told him about the PIP, the comments, the double standards with Terry, and the final meeting. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then the lawyer just said, "Oh yeah, we've got a case." He told me, under no circumstances, to sign the company's paperwork. He would be sending them a letter. A week went by. I was still in this weird limbo. Then I got another call from Bruce. He sounded amused. "You might want to check out the company's Glassdoor page," he said. I went online. There it was. A new, long, detailed review of our branch. It was anonymous, but I knew it was written by someone in the department. The language was too specific. It was brutal. It talked about a toxic new manager who fosters a culture of fear and favoritism. It mentioned how she preaches empowerment while actively discriminating against male employees, particularly fathers. It described the women-only lunches and the passive-aggressive comments in meetings. The final line was, "If you are a man, have a family, or believe in actual equality instead of corporate-branded hypocrisy, do not work here. You will be targeted and pushed out." The review had dozens of helpful votes already. Bruce told me that Cheryl had held a furious meeting about the review. She demanded to know who wrote it. She threatened to have IT track down the author. People just stared at her blankly. No one said a word. The silent rebellion was in full swing. Productivity had dropped to near zero. Deadlines were being missed left and right. When Cheryl asked for status updates, people would give her vague, unhelpful answers. Important files would get accidentally moved to the wrong server folder, causing hours of delay. Someone mistakenly messed up the scheduling for a huge client presentation, forcing Cheryl to apologize and reschedule, which made her look incompetent to her own bosses. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Bruce said she was losing control, and she knew it. She was becoming more and more erratic. A few days later, he called me again. This time, his voice was serious. "It's happening," he said. He told me that he and Terry had drafted a formal letter. It wasn't just a complaint. It was a detailed, chronological account of everything Cheryl had done, starting from her first week. It detailed the public humiliation, the impossible workloads, the biased treatment, and the circumstances of my firing. Terry's testimony was the centerpiece. She contrasted how Cheryl treated her as a working mother versus how she treated me as a working father. It laid the hypocrisy bare. They didn't send it to the local HR guy. They knew he was useless. They researched the company's corporate structure and found the name of the vice president of a major division, a guy several levels above Cheryl. They sent the letter directly to him, and they got about 10 other people in the department to co-sign it. "We just dropped a bomb on HQ," Bruce said. "Now we wait to see what happens." I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, my lawyer called me. He said he had just received a very panicked phone call from the company's head of legal. They wanted to talk, immediately. My lawyer told me that this was a very good sign. It meant the letter had hit its mark. He told me not to agree to anything and let him handle it. The next thing I heard, again from Bruce, was that the VP was flying in. He showed up at the office unannounced, a guy in a sharp, expensive suit. He didn't even talk to Cheryl at first. He commandeered a conference room and started calling people in, one by one. He called in Terry. He called in Bruce. He called in everyone who signed the letter. Bruce said the guy was no nonsense. He just sat them down and said, "Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out." Bruce said he laid it all out. He didn't hold back. He told the VP that Cheryl had destroyed the department's morale and was a massive liability to the company. Terry apparently walked him through the timeline, showing him emails and calendar invites that backed up their story. The investigation took the whole day. Cheryl was apparently pacing in her office like a caged animal. Finally, at the end of the day, the VP called her into the conference room. The door was glass. Bruce said the entire office just stopped working and watched. He said you couldn't hear what they were saying, but you could see it all. At first, Cheryl was talking, probably trying to defend herself. Then the VP started talking, and she stopped. Her face went from confident to concerned to pale white. At one point, she put her head in her hands. The meeting lasted about 20 minutes. The VP stood up and opened the door. Cheryl walked out. She looked completely defeated. She didn't look at anyone. She walked to her office, picked up one of those standard cardboard boxes, and started putting her things in it. The office was dead silent. The only sound was her putting her personal effects into the box. Bruce told me the best part was watching her pack her "The Future is Female" coffee mug. A security guard appeared and stood by her desk, just watching. When she was done, he escorted her out of the building. She didn't even get to say goodbye. A public walk of shame. The next morning, I was at home feeding the baby when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. "Is this Paul?" a man's voice asked. It was a calm, authoritative voice. I said yes. He introduced himself. It was the VP. The first words out of his mouth were, "On behalf of the entire company, I want to offer you our most sincere and profound apology." I was so shocked I didn't know what to say. He said that what happened to me was unacceptable and went against everything the company stood for. He said that Cheryl's employment had been terminated, and then he made me an offer. he offered me my job back, but not just my old job. He offered me a promotion to a senior position, a position that was technically a step above what Cheryl had been. He also offered me full back pay for the time I was gone, plus a significant additional sum as a formal settlement and apology to be handled through my lawyer. He said, "We messed up, Paul. We let a bad manager damage our team and hurt a good employee. We want to make it right. We want you to come back." I took a deep breath. I looked at my son sitting in his high chair, babbling and smacking his hands on the tray. I said, "Yes, I accept." My first day back was surreal. I walked through the same glass doors I had been escorted out of just a few weeks earlier. As soon as I stepped into the department, someone started clapping, then someone else, and then the whole office stood up and gave me an ovation. It was overwhelming. I felt my face get hot. Terry came over and gave me a quick hug. "Welcome back," she said, smiling. Bruce walked over, shook my hand firmly, and just gave me a nod. "Don't let anyone ever mistake kindness for weakness, kid," was all he said. I walked over to my old desk. Everything was just as I had left it. I took out my things and set them back up. The last thing I took out of the box was the picture of my wife and my son. I placed it right in the center of my desk, and I got back to work.